Every line on the map hides a handshake. From secret land grabs to oil deals whispered over cigars, this is how America built an empire, while insisting it was just networking. America once ended at the Mississippi River. It nervously stared across the water at Spain's property line. The young republic even had to ask permission just to float its boats down to New Orleans. So much for the land of the free. Safely tucked behind the Atlantic, the US could watch Europe's endless drama, popcorn in hand, as Napoleon and Britain tore up the continent. Napoleon, though, needed cash badly. Cannons don't come cheap, and empires are extra. So he looked west. In 1800, he snatched the Louisiana territory back from Spain, ready to plant the French flag from New Orleans to the Rockies. But fate had other plans. 500,000 enslaved people in Saint-Domingue, today's Haiti, thought, why should Europeans have the monopoly on revolutions? Led by Toussaint Louverture, they fought for freedom and won. Everyone loves an underdog story. France's Caribbean empire eventually went up in smoke. Literally, no sugar, no money, no dreams of a French America. But there was one deal that made everything possible. I'll unpack the events and reasons that made America the empire it is today. So, Napoleon cut his losses. He sold the Louisiana Territory to Thomas Jefferson, 828,000 square miles for $15 million, about $370 million today, a garage sale price for half a continent. The U.S. doubled in size overnight. The Mississippi was now America's main street, no more saying por favor to Spain. Ironically, Jefferson had to use Alexander Hamilton's fancy financial system to make it happen. The same one he'd spent years trashing. The same one Lin-Manuel Miranda rapped about. The Federalists weren't happy. About the deal, not the Broadway show. But after the deal, they never questioned the White House again. Jefferson pulled off the biggest real estate deal in American history and got away with it because no one could really argue with him. It just made too much sense. But not every land grab looked that smart on paper. Enter William Seward. Everyone thought the Secretary of State lost his mind when he bought Alaska. Snow, ice, empty. Basically one big frozen storage unit. Russia was eager to get rid of it. They'd just taken a beating in the Crimean War and needed cash more than coastline. The price? $7.2 million, about $130 million today. Critics called it Seward's Folly, a multi-million-dollar ice cube. Russia soon got seller's remorse. Just 30 years after dumping Alaska, prospectors struck gold, transforming the frozen wasteland into the wild north. And uncovering that gold wasn't the only treasure beneath the permafrost. In 1968, drillers hit the jackpot. Black gold, an ocean of it, roughly 3.2 billion barrels in reserve, the fourth largest in the nation. And that's not counting natural gas, second only to Texas. For a place once written off as a frozen mistake, Alaska turned out to be one very profitable icebox. Today, Alaska's oil revenues make that $7.2 million look like a typo. Seward's Folly became one of the best bargains in American history, proof that not every bad idea stays bad. Some just take 100 years to brag about. But it's not all about the dollar signs. Russia's decision to bail on Alaska still haunts it. There are 9 military bases staring right across the Bering Strait. Alaska didn't just give the US a cold chunk of land, it gave it leverage, a frozen weapon on the Pacific chessboard. From there, America could flex its muscles halfway around the world while keeping the core homeland wrapped in a cozy blanket of safety. And that wasn't the only bold move. The country that broke free from a king turned around and helped dethrone one in a tropical paradise. Back in 1810, King Kamehameha I had done the impossible. He'd united the islands into a single kingdom. But that came with strings attached. Western backers had bankrolled the dream, and now they wanted payback. By the late 1800s, the Hawaiian monarchy was surrounded, outnumbered, outgunned, and outfinanced. Sharks in the water, and sharks in boats. Then, in 1887, a gang of armed Westerners calling themselves the Honolulu Rifles showed up. They came with smiles and rifles and made the king an offer he couldn't refuse. They called it the Bayonet Constitution, not a nickname, a warning label. Overnight, royal power vanished. It was replaced by sugar barons and businessmen running the islands like a company, just with better weather and surfing. 5 years later, the same crew got the band back together, but they had a rebrand. The Annexation Club. Sounds harmless, like a high school debate team, except their topic was empire. 5 Americans, 1 Brit, 1 German. A tiny cast for a very big heist. When Queen Liliuokalani tried to take back her throne, they moved fast. Now they were the Committee of Safety. Sounds reassuring. Then you realize whose safety they meant. They called in 162 U.S. sailors for protection. On January 17, 1893, it was over before anyone broke a sweat. Swift, bloodless, and efficient. A coup executed with the precision of a boardroom merger. It took until 1898 for the United States to finally admit it had an empire problem, and it liked it. President Grover Cleveland wasn't down with annexing Hawaii. He even scolded the coup like a disappointed dad. I'm not mad. It's just now constitutional. But his successor? He was the cool uncle, the one who shows up late, ignores the rules, and buys the kids fireworks. That same year, the Spanish-American War kicked off. Suddenly, the US wasn't just a country, it was a contender. Spain's empire was scrambling like a YouTuber desperate for likes, and America showed up like Mr. Beast. Bigger budget, louder, and sociopathic tendencies. Speaking of YouTubers, if you're enjoying these map deep dives, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It's the only thing keeping my internal compass from spinning wildly. Anyway, the US started collecting territories like they were Pokemon cards. Cuba, Puerto Rico, the Philippines, Guam, gotta catch 'em all. Empire Edition. The Spanish-American War was more important than just the territories it gave to America, though. And out of the chaos rode Theodore Roosevelt, the Rough Rider himself, part soldier, part showman, 100% mustache. 1 war, 1 horse, instant celebrity. Who needs TikTok? His enemies tried to bury him in politics. Governor of New York, then vice president. Perfect way to keep him busy and far from real power until McKinley got shot. Suddenly, the guy they couldn't control was sitting in the Oval Office. Roosevelt looked outward, always did. France had tried to carve a canal through Panama and nearly drowned in the mud. Roosevelt saw that mess and thought, challenge accepted. A shortcut between oceans, a hinge for world trade, a monument to American willpower, one mosquito bite at a time. Back then, ships traveling between the Atlantic and Pacific had to swing all the way around South America, a 14,000-mile trip around Cape Horn. It was full of storms, mutiny, and misery, and expensive. It was Amazon trying to deliver a package in a hurricane. Roosevelt wanted to change that. He wanted to take on nature and give it a KO. At first, it looked possible. In early 1903, he struck a deal with Colombia, which controlled Panama. But then Colombia's Congress got greedy. There weren't enough zeros in the fine print. So they killed the deal, and Roosevelt's canal dream, for now. Roosevelt wasn't the type to take no for an answer. When Colombia killed the canal deal, he didn't feel sorry for himself. He cracked his knuckles. This was the guy who boxed in the White House, wrestled reporters for fun, and thought diplomacy meant speaking softly while having an entire navy. So he took matters into his own hands. He sent U.S. warships to observe Panama's independence movement, which just so happened to succeed the moment those ships showed up. Pure coincidence. By the end of 1903, Roosevelt wasn't talking to Colombia anymore. He was chatting with Philippe Navarilla, a French engineer from the failed canal project who somehow was now representing Panama, a country he didn't even live in. What are the chances? They made a deal that would make any real estate agent proud. Panama got $10 million and a yearly allowance. The US got permanent control of a 10-mile wide canal zone. Not bad for a revolution that lasted less time than a modern flight from Miami to Panama City. That 14,000-mile trip, now 5,000 miles. The world got smaller, America got bigger, and geography got punched in the face. Today, the Panama Canal carries around 6% of all maritime trade. and almost half of America's container traffic. It turned the world's map into a shortcut and gave the US a cheat code for strategy. The Navy could now move between oceans in days instead of weeks. Roosevelt called the Canal his greatest foreign policy victory, and few stopped to ask what Colombia or Panama thought. But superpowers don't ask permission. They just redrew the map. The US had officially joined the club, and the Canal was its membership card. The Canal Zone eventually went back to Panama, but America's influence never really left. The US Navy still hangs around, like that one X that can't let go, but the Canal didn't just reshape geography, it reshaped power and gave America a new weapon, the dollar. William Howard Taft took over from Roosevelt in 1909. One mustache for another. Out went gunboat diplomacy, in came dollar diplomacy. Loans and business deals instead of battleships. Less boom, more bank. With Secretary of State Philander C. Knox, a name that sounds both rich and guilty, Taft pushed this money-first strategy across the Caribbean, Latin America, and even China. Roosevelt had tested the idea earlier in the Dominican Republic. He traded loans for control of its customs system, basically repo men with flags. Taft didn't just copy the play, he supersized it then. In Nicaragua, he toppled dictator José Santos Zelaya like he was clearing space on a monopoly board. Congress protested, Taft shrugged, signed an executive order, and democracy on pause. Problem solved. But in China, the plan sputtered. It was too big, too divided, too many empires elbowing for space at the table. The US tried to buy influence, but China wasn't taking offers. Worse, the whole thing soured relations with Japan. Thankfully, nothing bad happened there. Oh wait, Taft fortunately didn't live to see it. He genuinely believed money could buy peace. That financial stability would somehow create political stability. He was the kind of guy who'd rather shake hands than throw hands. His predecessor? Not so much. Roosevelt never met a fight he didn't like. Guns broke down doors, but dollars kept them open. 3 decades later, the same logic moved from battleships to balance sheets, as we will later see. So, back to him. Roosevelt had tangled with Colombia and Panama, sure, but his real brawl came stateside, against a man who made capitalism look like a contact sport. John D. Rockefeller. Rockefeller was rich, stupid rich, all from America's industrial boom. But it wasn't just oil that powered his empire. It was paperwork, favors, smoke-filled rooms. His business model wasn't a better product at a better price, it was massacre. Late in 1871, the South Improvement Company was born. Forgettable name, terrible purpose. A secret pact between Big Oil and Big Rail. Overnight, Rockefeller went full Pac-Man. He bought up one refinery after another. By 1900, he didn't just run the oil industry, he was the oil industry. So, in 1906, Roosevelt's Justice Department sued Standard Oil. They called it an illegal monopoly. The trial dragged on for years because Rockefeller kept ducking subpoenas like he was allergic to them. But when the verdict came down, Standard Oil didn't die. It just respawned. Smaller, faster, and richer than before. Justice served, allegedly. That's because Rockefeller got richer. The broken company split into pieces with familiar names: Exxon, Mobil, Chevron, and JD had stock in all of them. By the time cars took over America, Rockefeller wasn't shattered. He was sitting in a leather chair watching his broken empire fill every gas tank in America, twirling his mustache like a cartoon villain. During World War I, Washington had a revelation. Wars run on oil. Lawmakers started sweating over how long America's supply would last. The tanks were full, sure, but the future? That was running on fumes. Luckily, the US had leverage. It had helped win the war, and Britain and France owed it big, so America called in the tab. Europe wanted to keep the world's oil fields locked up like a private club. The US kicked the door open and called it an open-door policy. Translation: democracy means drilling where we want. It started in Iraq. American companies squeezed in alongside British and French partners. Then, in 1928, Standard Oil of California struck black gold in Bahrain. 5 years later, Saudi Arabia. Texaco joined in too. Soon, American and British firms were carving up Latin America like a business buffet. By World War II, the US wasn't just swimming in oil. It was Scrooge McDuck diving in it. Germany invaded Russia to get some. Japan attacked America after the US cut off 90% of its supply. Rockefeller's monopoly playbook had gone global. It was steering US foreign policy. Only this time, the prize wasn't just oil. It was the world itself. You've heard the term Banana Republic before. Not the clothing store, the real thing. It all started with an actual banana company. Seriously, the United Fruit Company didn't just sell fruit. It built an empire out of it. Railroads, ports, telegraph lines. Half of Central America became its supply chain. It wasn't farming anymore. It was running countries. The plantations had flags. It doesn't get more official than that. And its vines reached all the way to Washington. John Foster Dulles, later Secretary of State, used to be the company's lawyer. His brother Allen Dulles, future CIA director, sat on its board. Two brothers, two branches of government. The appointments came at a convenient time. Guatemala elected a new president in 1951, Jacobo Arbenz, polite, progressive, and popular. The next year, he signed an act redistributing idle land, 224 acres per family. The poor loved it. United Fruit did not. The company owned so much unused land it could have built its own zip code. Suddenly, Arbenz wasn't just a reformer. He was a commie, the Moscow in the jungle kind. Washington panicked, or pretended to. When Guatemala's land reform threatened United Fruit's empire, the company didn't panic. It made a phone call, straight to Washington. In 1954, US-backed forces rolled in and President Arbenz rolled out. United Fruit kept the land. Guatemala got a civil war that lasted decades. The coup came wrapped in the usual gift paper, anti-communism. But Arbenz's real crime? Trying to modernize without a US-approved hall pass. United Fruit operated like something out of a cyberpunk fever dream. Corporate troops in the jungle, executives in Washington, propaganda spinning faster than a ceiling fan in July. Progress, development. It was an empire with better branding. A private company running foreign policy from a corner office. No uniforms, no flags, just letterhead. And the brand? Still around. It just went through a few costume changes. United Fruit became United Brands in the 70s. Then Chiquita in the 80s. That friendly blue and yellow sticker on your banana? That's history smiling at you. You're welcome for the coup. The US doesn't always need coups, though. Sometimes it just sends an invoice. Despite being nearly $38 trillion in debt and raising its borrowing limit like I raise my credit card limit, America has never gone bankrupt. It wrote the rules of the global economy, then signed its own name at the top. How? Simple. Bretton Woods, a mountain resort in New Hampshire. It made the dollar the world's measuring stick. It's where in 1944, the future of money got decided over coffee and exhaustion. The goal? Keep the next Great Depression from happening. The problem? Nobody agreed on how. Two men squared off. On one side, John Maynard Keynes, Britain's economic rock star. Is that really a thing? Keynes was still clinging to the idea that the empire had some say left. On the other, the Americans, who'd already brought the world to heel through production lines and war bonds. Keynes pitched something bold, a global central bank called the Clearing Union with its own neutral currency, the banker. Catchy. Each nation could borrow within limits. Surpluses would be recycled. Balance was the dream. Stability, the goal. Think of it as socialism for trade. Polite, mathematical, and British. America's plan was simpler, more restrained, at least on paper. A system backed by gold and national currencies. A polite way of saying, you trust us, and we'll make sure you never have to read the fine print. But Bretton Woods wasn't a negotiation, it was theater. The US didn't walk in to debate the British Empire, it walked in to repossess it. America was building twice as many planes and 7 times as many ships as Britain, and the British were paying for it all on credit. American credit. Their debt was twice the size of their entire economy, owed to the same people smiling across the table. Britain was maxing out its credit card at America's store. And to really drive it home, US troops were now parked in Britain's colonies. For security, obviously. The Empire still flew the Union Jack, but Washington had the keys. So America got the gold, literally. Keynes won a few polite rounds at Bretton Woods, but U.S. Treasury official Harry Dexter White walked away with the trophy. In 1945, his version became a reality, the International Monetary Fund. Member currencies would hover within 1% of the US dollar, and the dollar itself was pegged to gold at $35 an ounce. Not the pound, not Keynes's dreamy banker, the dollar, the new measuring stick for the planet. That gave Washington something better than an empire: leverage. With the dollar as the world's benchmark, America could rebuild Europe, bankroll allies, and buy influence wholesale. It was dollar diplomacy 2.0. Same swagger, fewer gunboats. But then in 1971, Nixon snapped the golden ruler in half. He ended dollar convertibility. The whole system should have crashed. It didn't. Nixon had a backup plan, one that ran on oil and pure American confidence. The US had already practiced this kind of control the old-fashioned way. In 1953, the CIA and Britain's MI6 helped overthrow Iran's Prime Minister, Mohammad Mossadegh, after he nationalized Western oil. The Shah came back. US access to oil stayed safe. Fast forward to 1971, and that logic went global. Gold was out, oil was in. The dollar would now be backed by barrels instead of bullion. The Petrodollar, a much better name than the banker. The system was so powerful it turned energy itself into American currency, and the world never stopped paying the bill. The petrodollar rose without much resistance. Hard to resist when you're broke. By the 1970s, Europe was still cleaning up the mess it made 30 years earlier. To rebuild allies and box in communism, Washington launched the Marshall Plan, $13.3 billion, about $150 billion today, to jumpstart Europe's recovery. Not charity. A down payment. 16 nations got aid carefully designed to make them loyal customers. Freedom came with store credit. Then came NATO, tying Western Europe's security to the US like a shared bank account. Article 5 promised defense. Article 2 whispered economic coordination. Drafted by Canada, sure, but written in fluent American. Between the lines, it said, keep your economies compatible with ours. Europe's financial stability was now connected directly to America's economy. And Washington, it owned the Wi-Fi password. NATO wasn't just a shield, it was a shopping mall. After World War II flattened Europe's factories, America showed up with shelves full of military hardware. The Walmart of weapons. Buy now, rebuild later. And the sale never really ended. Between 2022 and 2023, 63% of EU defense contracts went to American firms. Nearly 2/3 of Europe's security spending flies right back across the Atlantic, first class. And the big plan to diversify? Lower that number to 50%, half off. Like, that's independence. NATO isn't just an alliance, it's a conveyor belt. Euros go in, dollars come out. Missiles in between, a perfectly balanced system, if you happen to live in Washington. The United States keeps at least 128 military bases across 49 countries. Sounds like an empire. It isn't. Well, not officially. These aren't conquests, they're partnerships. Host nations invite the troops, some even foot the bill. Japan alone spends about $8.6 billion every 5 years, roughly 75% of the cost to host more US soldiers than anywhere else on Earth. Rent due, flags included. But bases get awkward. Tanks aren't subtle. So Washington learned to project power a different way. Less boots, more billboards, culture. Hollywood became America's soft power engine. Edison built the camera. California built the empire. Filmmakers ran from the East Coast thanks to Edison's patent fees. Then came the biggest plot twist in movie history. Hitler purged Jewish artists from Germany's thriving film industry, one of the best in the world. They fled to America. the Nazis lost their filmmakers, and eventually the war. From there, Hollywood didn't just make movies. It made legends. All 50 of the highest-grossing films ever made come from U.S. studios. In 2024, American productions still pulled 69.5% of the world's box office, down from 85.6% in 2014. But still enough to make freedom look like a franchise. Even the tech that's disrupting it, streaming, is American. The medium changed. The message didn't. It still flies the stars and stripes, now buffering in 4K. Netflix now has over 301 million subscribers worldwide. Sure, there's plenty of Japanese and South Korean content, but don't kid yourself. It's still an American export, just with subtitles. No theaters, no living rooms, just a phone. Cultural imperialism with autoplay. And those phones? Mostly American under the skin. About 1.4 billion people use iPhones. That's 1 in 5 people living in Apple's ecosystem. The other 3.6 billion use Android, software owned by Google, headquartered in California. Even Samsung phones run American code. The empire runs on updates, and occasionally overheats. Google itself, a global oracle, it controls 90% of the world's search traffic. The word Google turned into a verb. Apparently, look it up took too long. From Tokyo to Paris to Sao Paulo, the planet now looks things up in English. Every search, every curiosity, every late-night panic, all going through the same servers in Silicon Valley. Sure, China collects more data, but it does it like a bouncer. Loud, slightly aggressive, and checking IDs. The US does it like a butler. Polite, silent, and already holding your phone on a silver tray. It's an empire by convenience. No guns, no speeches, just a pop-up that says accept all cookies, and somehow we always do. In the US, it's the private companies doing the spying. Sorry, data collection. That gives Washington plausible deniability. We're not watching you. Our partners are. Firms like Google build cloud systems for the Pentagon and train AI for military use. Silicon Valley is subcontracting for the empire. The line between government and business isn't blurred. It's been outsourced. It started in the Cold War. Science and paranoia went on a double date. The 1950s and 60s turned into a high-tech playoff. Capitalism versus communism, but with rockets instead of referees. The Soviets scored first in 1957 with Sputnik, a shiny metal ball that made America freak out so hard it invented NASA out of thin air. And NASA called IBM with a request. A computer that fits in a spaceship. IBM said impossible. NASA gave them $26 million, and suddenly, impossible was possible. They got a 60-pound machine for the Gemini rockets. It worked. Gemini led to Apollo. Apollo led to the moon. One small step for man, one giant contract for IBM. But the real moonshot came after. The mini-computers built for space became the seeds of American tech dominance. Apple, Microsoft, Intel, all descended from that government-funded race to out-nerd the Soviets. The USSR got propaganda posters. America got product launches. The Cold War didn't just end with victory parades, it ended with operating systems. The hammer and sickle faded, and the Apple logo booted up. America never had to call itself an empire. The receipts told the story. From Louisiana to Silicon Valley, the conquest came with contracts. And everyone signed. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more videos like this, then please consider subscribing and turn on notifications. Really does make a difference. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time on MatPack.